Boston, November. The wind was cutting that morning, dragging the last dry leaves across the sidewalks of Commonwealth Avenue. The city felt gray, almost soundless, as if the world outside had paused to take a breath. But maybe the silence was just inside me. Since the divorce, everything had felt suspended, still. I woke up before the alarm, again. The same dream, or maybe it was a fragment of something else. I was running through shadows. I didn't know where from or what was chasing me, but I knew, with every fiber of my body, that I couldn't stop. I sat on the edge of the bed, sheets still clinging to sweat. My chest was heaving, and I felt the echo of the dream at the base of my neck, like an invisible hand still resting there. The clock read 5:42 a.m. I went down to the kitchen, made some coffee, and turned on the noisy heater in the living room. Routine was the only thing keeping me grounded. Since Amanda left, my apartment had become a mausoleum, clean, quiet, and empty. Even my reflection in the hallway mirror looked like someone else. I teach anthropology at Boston University. I specialize in pre-Columbian cultures, mainly those that preceded the Incas. For years, I hid in books and the ruins of Latin America. More recently, I'd been hiding in test corrections, reports, and unfinished papers. That morning, as always, I opened my email before the sun came up. That's when I saw the subject line: Invitation, International Symposium on Andean Culture, Cusco, Peru. I almost skipped it. I get dozens of invitations like that, most of them impersonal, mass-sent, and pointless. But the sender's name froze me in place: Dr. Elias Tupac. Elias was something of a legend in our field, a Peruvian archaeologist more known for rumors than publications. They said he explored uncatalogued places, villages missing from modern maps, sites even local guides refused to approach. I remembered exchanging emails with him years ago after I'd published a paper on ceremonial obsidian mirrors in Wari funerary rituals. Elias had commented that these mirrors in some contexts weren't used for seeing oneself, but for holding voices. At the time, I thought it was too poetic, too dramatic for an archaeologist. But now, in his email, that same idea reappeared, more direct than ever. In addition to the symposium, I'm organizing a small expedition to a village called Huilaccocha. It's an isolated community in the Andes. According to the local elders, it holds the mirror of the crossing. They say it shows what's on the other side, and sometimes what's on the other side looks back. I need you to see it. I know how it sounds, but you'll understand. I read that last sentence several times. What's on the other side looks back. I closed the laptop, but the sentence stayed with me. For 3 days, I hesitated. I had classes to teach, deadlines to meet, graduate students waiting on feedback. And yet something about that message pulled at me, like I had already said yes before I'd even typed the reply. By the end of the week, I said yes. 2 weeks later, I landed in Lima. The connection to Cusco was quick, but the city's altitude hit me like a hammer. Breathing felt like swimming through syrup. But there was a strange clarity in the air, too, as if something inside me, maybe the same part that said yes to the email, was finally waking up. At the airport, Elias was waiting, holding a handwritten sign and smiling like he meant it. "Professor Whitaker," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "Or can I call you John?" I replied, "Elias, you're real." He laughed easily. He looked younger than I expected, maybe 40, with sharp dark eyes. He wore a traditional poncho over a white button-down and moved like someone who had long since memorized the ground beneath his feet. As we drove up Cusco's narrow streets, we talked about the symposium and his mysterious village. He navigated through motorcycles, tourists, and stray dogs like part of the city itself. Huilac Cocha, he said, drawing out the name, isn't on any map, and it shouldn't be. It's old, older than anyone wants to admit, built on ruins even the locals fear to disturb. The elders say it guards something, a threshold. A threshold to what? I asked. Between here and the other side, he replied calmly. A reflection, but not ours. His answers stayed with me all evening. The symposium lasted 3 days. On the first, I presented my talk on pre-Inca ceremonial mirrors. I discussed how certain cultures believed reflective surfaces weren't just tools, but portals into altered states of awareness. Some in the room saw it as metaphor. Others took notes in silence. But standing in that cold auditorium, I had the distinct feeling that something, or someone, was watching me through the window at the back. I turned once. No one was there. After that, I began to avoid mirrors, the hotel bathroom, the elevator, even my phone's black screen. There was always a slight delay, a subtle one, but enough to notice, as if my reflection took a breath before following my movements. On the final night, during the closing dinner, Elias approached my table. We leave tomorrow. Pack warm clothes and hiking boots. No watch. No watch, I repeated. Time doesn't behave the same way out there. I smiled, unsure if he was joking, but something inside me, maybe the same part that said yes to the email, knew he wasn't.
The morning we left Cusco, the air was thin and crisp, each breath a reminder that we were climbing towards something far from the world I knew. Elias drove us out of the city on a rattling old Jeep that seemed barely held together by prayer and stubborn metal. The roads twisted up the mountains like veins, disappearing into fog that clung to the peaks like ghosts. I kept stealing glances at him. He seemed completely at ease, as if these roads had been his home for years. Meanwhile, I was counting every shaky breath and trying not to think about what I had gotten myself into. After 5 hours of jarring travel, we reached a dirt track where the Jeep could go no further. The village of Huilac Cocha lay somewhere beyond, tucked into a valley wrapped in silence. The air felt different here, heavier, as if it carried a weight beyond altitude. We unpacked what we could carry and started hiking. The trail was rough, the rocks sharp underfoot, and the path barely visible beneath the thick undergrowth. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional distant bird call or the crunch of our boots on stone. As we walked, I found myself thinking about that phrase Elias had said, "Time doesn't behave the same way out here." I wanted to laugh at the superstition, but the unease sitting in my gut refused to let me. The village came into view late in the afternoon. It was smaller than I'd imagined, a scattering of stone huts, smoke curling from chimneys, and a few locals watching us warily from doorways. Children peeked out from behind wooden shutters, their eyes wide and curious, but cautious. Elias greeted the elders in Quechua, his tone respectful but firm. After a tense exchange, one of the women, an old lady with silver hair pulled back into a braid, nodded and gestured for us to follow. She introduced herself as Mama Taki. Her eyes were sharp, piercing, as if she could see into the corners of your soul you didn't know existed. She led us to a hut where a simple wooden frame held a single large obsidian mirror, black and glossy, almost liquid in its surface. "This is the mirror of the crossing," she said softly. "It is not for the eyes of all. It is a gateway, but not one of this world." I swallowed hard. The air seemed thicker here, the shadows deeper. Mama Taki's gaze never left me. "You carry the mark," she said. I wanted to ask what she meant, but my voice caught in my throat. That night, I lay awake in a small room the villagers had offered. The walls were rough stone, the window open to the cold mountain air. I stared at the obsidian mirror sitting on the wooden table nearby. It reflected nothing but darkness, yet I felt its weight pressing on my mind. I remembered the dream again, the fractured reflections, the shadow with the abysmal eyes. And I wondered, what if the other side was watching me back?
The next morning, the village was wrapped in a thin mist that blurred the edges of everything, turning the familiar into something eerie and unknown. I felt like I was walking inside a dream, one I couldn't wake from. Mama Taki had invited me to accompany her to the site where the mirror was kept, deeper inside a cave carved into the mountainside. She said it was a sacred place, protected by rituals older than any history book I had ever read. As we walked, the silence was profound. No bird song, no wind, just the sound of our footsteps and my own breathing, heavy from the altitude. The path narrowed, the shadows growing longer and darker with every step. I had an uneasy feeling, like eyes were watching from the darkness just beyond my vision. When we reached the cave entrance, the air changed, cool and damp, filled with the scent of earth and something metallic. The villagers had hung woven tapestries at the mouth of the cave, decorated with symbols I didn't recognize, but that seemed to pulse with meaning. Mama Taki lit a small bundle of herbs, the smoke curling around us like a protective veil. She murmured a chant in Quechua that sent a shiver down my spine. Inside the cave, the walls glistened with mineral deposits that reflected the flickering flame of her torch. The deeper we went, the more I felt that same weight on my chest, the sensation that the space itself was alive, watching. At the center of a small chamber stood the obsidian mirror. It was larger than I expected, nearly 4 feet tall, set in an ancient stone frame carved with intricate patterns. I approached it cautiously, my breath shallow. The surface was so black it seemed to swallow the light. As I stared, I thought I saw movement beneath its glassy surface, ripples, shadows shifting like smoke. Suddenly, a whisper brushed past my ear, so soft I almost didn't hear it. "John." My heart slammed in my chest. I spun around, but no one was there. "John." The voice was faint, distant, yet unmistakable. It was calling me. I turned back to the mirror, and for a moment the surface rippled again. I felt pulled toward it, as if the glass was a doorway. A cold breeze rose in the cave, though no wind could reach this deep. The shadows lengthened, twisting into shapes that I wanted to deny but couldn't. Then the whisper came again, this time clearer. "Look deeper. Find what you lost." I blinked, and the vision vanished. Shaken, I turned to Mama Taki, who was watching me with knowing eyes. "You are marked. The mirror has chosen you. You must decide what to face." I didn't know what that meant, but deep inside, I felt the truth of her words. That night, sleep eluded me. The whispers followed me in the dark. Shadows moved just beyond sight, and I realized that whatever I had crossed back in Boston, whatever that dream was, it had followed me here. I was no longer just a visitor. I was part of something much older, something that had been waiting for me to arrive.
Days in Huitlacocha folded into one another like pages in a worn book, heavy with meaning, but slipping through my fingers before I could grasp them fully. The village itself felt suspended out of time. Ancient stones, weathered faces, and rituals whispered in the dark. But inside me, something was unraveling. The dreams grew stronger, more vivid. The shadows in the obsidian mirror haunted every moment I wasn't looking, creeping into corners of my mind. At times, I felt their cold fingers grazing my thoughts, urging me deeper into whatever abyss awaited. Elias noticed. One evening, over a sparse meal of quinoa and roasted potatoes, he pulled me aside. "John, you're close. Too close." I looked at him, confused. Close to what? To the crossing. To whatever that mirror holds. The words hung in the air like a warning. That night, the whispers returned, but this time louder, more insistent. They slithered into my mind like a cold stream, chilling and relentless. Find the truth. Accept the other side. I tried to push them away, but they wrapped tighter around my thoughts. Sleep became a stranger. Every time I closed my eyes, the corridors from the dream stretched before me. Endless halls lined with fractured reflections, eyes that followed, mouths that screamed in silence. I began to doubt my own senses. Was I losing my grip on reality? Or was reality itself bending around me? One afternoon, unable to bear it, I confronted Mama Taki. "What is this place really?" I asked. She studied me with an unreadable expression. "This is a gate," she said simply, "a place where worlds overlap. The mirror is not just stone and glass, it is a passage. Some cross willingly, others are pulled." I shivered. "And the voices? They are the echoes of those who crossed before. They warn, they lure, they wait." I realized then that I was not merely a visitor or a curious scholar. I was a participant in a story older than I could imagine. Days later, during a storm that shook the mountains with thunder and lightning, the breaking point came. I found myself alone in the cave, staring into the mirror. The shadows inside moved like living things. The whispers crescendoed into a chorus. Cross, see, become. My hands trembled. My reflection fractured, multiplied into dozens of versions, each with a different expression. Some angry, some pleading. One smiling with a darkness I couldn't understand. I reached out, fingertips grazing the cold surface. Suddenly, the cave plunged into darkness. The mirror cracked, and a voice, my own, but twisted, whispered from the void, "Welcome home."
When I opened my eyes, I was no longer in the cave. At first, I thought I'd passed out, that the cold stone floor beneath me had been some hallucination. But then I looked up, and everything was wrong. The sky above was bruised purple, streaked with red veins like cracked glass. The air smelled of metal and earth, thick like steam rising from forgotten graves. The landscape around me was hollow, familiar and foreign at once, as if someone had rebuilt the Andes from a corrupted memory. The stone walls of the cave were gone. In their place stood monoliths, enormous slabs of obsidian, each reflecting distorted versions of me walking through a fog I couldn't see. The whispers were constant now, not around me, inside me. "You are here. You crossed." I stumbled forward. The ground felt unstable, like I was walking on something that breathed beneath the surface. I passed through a grove of dead trees, their branches clawing at the sky, leafless and sharp. Some of them had cloth tied around the trunks, red, black, and white. Offerings? Warnings? Then I saw them. Figures. Not people. Not spirits either. Shadows with shape, humanoid but featureless, gliding across the mist like smoke given form. They didn't speak. They only watched. And when they turned their heads, I felt it like a blade across the back of my neck. One of them moved toward me. It didn't walk. It slid, as if gravity meant nothing here.
I wanted to run, but my body stayed still, frozen. The figure stopped inches from me. And then, without a mouth, it spoke. Not out loud, but directly into my mind. "You have come far, seeker, but this is not where the mirror ends. This is where it begins." Suddenly, I was no longer in that place. I was in Boston again, in my apartment. But everything was off. The colors too pale, the furniture placed slightly wrong, the air too still. I walked to the mirror above the fireplace, and I wasn't in it. Someone else was. Someone who looked like me, same face, same eyes, but the smile wasn't mine. It was too wide, too calm. He raised a hand and waved. I stepped back, heart pounding. The walls pulsed, the floor groaned. I screamed, but the sound made no echo, as if the room itself refused to acknowledge my presence. And then I was back in the Obsidian Valley. I dropped to my knees, gasping. The whispers grew quieter, but I knew one thing now. I hadn't just crossed. I had been seen. And someone on the other side now knew me.
I don't remember how I got out of the cave. I just remember Elias's voice, distant and muffled, like he was shouting underwater. His hands on my shoulders, trying to keep me grounded. The villagers surrounding us, murmuring prayers. Smoke filled the air again. Sage, herbs, something sharp and bitter that stung my nose. My body was back, but not all of me came with it. I sat on the floor of the hut for hours, staring at nothing. The world around me was muted, like I was watching it from behind a sheet of glass. The villagers didn't speak to me, not directly. Only Mama Taki approached. She sat in front of me, her voice low and calm. "You crossed the mirror," she said, "and it saw you." I nodded. "You brought something back," she added. That made me look up. "What do you mean?" She didn't answer. She just handed me a mirror. A small one, round, obsidian. I held it in my hand and looked in. For a moment I saw myself, tired, pale, aged 10 years in a single night. And then I blinked, and my reflection didn't. It watched me. Not like a mirror watches, like something trapped on the other side, waiting. I dropped it. It didn't break, just rolled to a stop, face up, the reflection now normal again. That night, I locked the door of the hut. I pushed a wooden chair against it and stuffed the gaps in the windows with old cloth, but it didn't help. Around midnight, I heard footsteps, inside the room, soft, careful. I sat up, heart pounding, no lights, no sound except the slow, measured steps. I held my breath. The steps stopped, inches from my bed. I didn't look. I couldn't. Then, breathing. Not mine. Heavy. Right above me. I turned. No one was there. The next morning, I asked Elias to take me back. He didn't argue. He just nodded, like he knew this would happen. We left Wheelock Kocha in silence. The hike back to the jeep felt longer, the air heavier. I kept looking over my shoulder, convinced something was behind us. Nothing ever appeared, but the sense of being followed never left me.
When we reached Cusco, Elias gave me a package. For when you're ready to understand, but don't open it at night. Then he hugged me, the first and only time. Back in Boston, nothing felt the same. My apartment was unchanged, but the shadows were thicker. The mirrors seemed to hum softly when I walked past. I kept the package on my shelf, unopened. The dreams returned, worse than before. I didn't see the valley anymore. I saw myself, or something that looked like me, standing in my apartment, wearing my face, staring into the same mirror. But his eyes weren't mine. One night I woke up and found the mirror in the hallway turned to face the wall. I never moved it. Another time I found a message written in condensation on the bathroom mirror. Still here. I lived alone. Eventually, I opened the package. Inside, a journal, old, hand-bound, filled with notes in Quechua and broken Spanish. It wasn't Elias's handwriting. Each page told stories of others who had crossed centuries ago, decades, even years before me. Different names, same fate. Whispers, reflections that didn't match, things that followed them home. One entry stood out. If it learns your name, it can wear your voice. That night, I received a call from an unknown number. I answered and heard my own voice. "John? It's me." It was me. My cadence, my tone, but wrong. I hung up. The phone rang again, same number. This time, no voice, just breathing, slow, deep, like someone standing just behind the phone. I turned off the lights in the apartment and saw my silhouette still standing in the hallway mirror, not moving, not blinking, just smiling.
I started covering the mirrors, every last one. The hallway mirror was the first to go, draped in an old bedsheet and duct taped to the wall. Then the bathroom, the bedroom, the kitchen backsplash. Even the black screen of my laptop stayed closed, face down. It didn't matter. It still found ways to look back at me. I'd wake up in the middle of the night to see faint handprints in the fog on the bathroom mirror, even though no one had touched it, or shadows cast on walls where no person stood. Sometimes, out of the corner of my eye, I'd catch the edge of a smile, wide and wrong, vanishing when I turned. I was losing time. I'd blink and find myself standing somewhere else in the apartment, in the kitchen with the faucet running, though I hadn't touched it, or at the window, staring out into the dark street below, unaware of how long I'd been there. And the worst part? I started hearing myself, talking. I'd be reading on the couch, and from the bedroom I'd hear my own voice muttering or laughing. Once, I heard it whispering my ex-wife's name, Amanda. I stopped sleeping. Elias didn't respond to any of my emails. Eventually, I tried calling. His number was disconnected. I even searched for news. Maybe he'd returned to Huilacocha. Maybe something happened to him. But there was nothing, as if he had never existed. I considered checking into a hospital, telling someone, anyone, what was happening. But I knew what they'd say. Stress, hallucinations, sleep deprivation. But I wasn't hallucinating.
because one night I caught it. I was passing the mirror in the hallway, the one I'd covered. The sheet had slipped, and there it was, my reflection. But it didn't move with me. It stood still, head tilted, eyes wide, smiling. And then it waved, slowly, mocking. I screamed. I ripped the sheet back over the mirror. I duct-taped it shut until my fingers bled. But the next morning, the mirror was uncovered again, and there was no tape on the floor. I knew then it wasn't stuck in the mirror anymore. It had crossed fully. I was being watched from inside my own life. The apartment lights flickered. The air turned cold in rooms I hadn't entered. Electronics turned on by themselves. My phone played voice memos I didn't record. My voice whispering nonsense phrases in Quechua, sometimes just breathing. And always, always that presence. Behind me, beside me, inside me. One night, I recorded myself sleeping, just to prove I wasn't going crazy. What I heard the next day made my blood turn to ice. At 3:17 a.m., the recording captured the sound of footsteps. Then, the unmistakable sound of my voice whispering, "You are the mirror now," followed by laughter, not mine, not fully human. That was the night I packed a bag. Not much, just essentials. No mirrors, no screens. I turned off my phone, locked the apartment, and left Boston without telling anyone. I drove for hours, into the mountains, into the cold. I rented a cabin with no electricity, no plumbing, just firewood and silence. But silence is never empty. The first night I dreamed of the valley again, the obsidian slabs, the whispering shadows, and something else now, me standing among them, not watching, leading. When I woke, there were handprints on the inside of the cabin windows, long, slender, facing inward. Now I don't sleep much. I don't look at my reflection, not even in water. Sometimes I see it anyway, in the flicker of the fire, in the shine of a doorknob, a glint off the blade of a knife. It waits. It watches. It smiles. I thought I escaped, but it stayed.
I used to wonder how people vanished. Not physically. Anyone can disappear with a plane ticket and a lie. I mean really vanish. From themselves. From everything that once tethered them to the world. Now I know. Because I'm almost gone. And something else has taken my place. The days in the cabin blur together. My right to stay grounded. Pages filled with reminders of who I was. My name, my job, the face I used to see in the mirror. But lately, even those memories feel foreign, distant, like someone else lived them. At night, I hear footsteps on the roof. Not animals. Too slow, too deliberate. Sometimes I wake to find my boots moved, or the door slightly ajar, even though I locked it tight. Once, I woke up outside, lying in the snow. No footprints around me but my own. But it's not just me anymore. Something walks with me, moves when I move, smiles when I try not to. It knows how I think. and it's learning to speak like me. Last week, or maybe it was longer, I found something scratched into the cabin wall. A single sentence in my handwriting. He lives in the echo. I didn't write it, but I remembered it anyway. The thing that crossed back with me, it doesn't need a body, not like we do. It lives in memory, in reflection. It wears your guilt like a mask, your face like a glove, and your name like a stolen coat. And once it fits you, it never takes you off. I tried to leave, once. I packed my bag, climbed into the truck, and drove through the snow and silence. For hours, but the road never changed. Trees, rocks, a broken sign I passed again and again. I wasn't moving, or time wasn't, or I wasn't me anymore. I stopped, got out, and screamed into the woods. No echo came back. That's when I knew I never left the mirror.
I think it's using me now, testing me out. At night, I find notes written in my journal, not in English, in Quechua, but I understand them. Soon you'll be hollow enough. Sometimes I speak in my sleep, words I don't know, languages that burn on my tongue. And when I dream now, I don't see the valley. I see people, my colleagues, Amanda, my old apartment. And I'm there, inside those dreams, but I'm not watching. I'm walking, smiling. And they don't know. They think it's me. One night, I lit every candle I had and stood in front of the darkened window. No glass, no mirror, just the reflection of firelight on a black sky. And I asked, aloud, "What are you?" And from the dark came my voice, "I'm what's left when your fear finishes feeding." Now, I barely write. The voice in my head feels louder than mine. Sometimes I think I'm the one whispering. Other times, I know I'm not. I caught a glimpse of myself yesterday in a puddle outside the cabin. Just for a moment, I was smiling, but I wasn't. If you find this, burn it. Don't trace the path. Don't seek Wilak Kocha. Don't stare too long into the dark. Because if you listen hard enough, if you lean just a little closer, if you hear a voice like your own calling your name, it's already too late. Because the thing that wears my name now, it knows how to wear yours too.